Welcome back to MMA Al Dente, the only MMA YouTube channel to suggest that Chase Hooper had developed man strength. All right, Calvin Kattar versus Arnold Allen. I'm going through the whole event. I'm going to start at the top. Unfortunately, the top is dog shit. Calvin Kattar gets injured in the second round, really the first round, and we got one round of action out of these guys. It's unfortunate when any fight ends this way. It's especially unfortunate when any main event ends this way. But it's fucking tragic when the top candidate for fight of the night and main event ends this way. And that's what this was. I had really high hopes for this fight. And, I think we were on our way to getting it. It was a one-sided round one. Not that Kattar did nothing, but Allen was clearly winning, and on top of that had a flurry that was very reminiscent of his TKO over Dan Hooker. So, but look, I picked Kattar to win, and I'm not saying he would have won. He certainly wasn't favored to win after round one, but generally speaking, I expected him to do better later than earlier. So, I'm not ready to dismiss him as a lesser fighter than Arnold Allen. And certainly it wasn't a legitimate defeat. It was a fluky injury there. But Arnold Allen looked good. And I do think, this was enough to move him forward here. He said in the post-fight interview that this doesn't make him worthy of fighting Volkanovski. I thought he should have been more assertive because I do think, again, he looked good against Kattar in round one. May not be a legitimate victory, but this guy, he's 9-0 now in the UFC. And he's looked very good against good competition. I think he absolutely is worthy of fighting for the title. I don't think he should. I think, you got guys in between, and he'll probably end up fighting one of them because the champion is moving up to lightweight anyway. The whole division is a shit show. But Arnold Allen's right there with Yair Rodriguez, Josh Emmett, whoever the hell else, Max Holloway, And he'll probably be fighting one of those guys next, which is awesome. I do think, again, he only moves forward from here. This was his first real showcase as the main event. I think his last fight against Hooker was a co-main or something, but this was his main event, his fucking face and name on the poster, and he came out like a bat out of hell, looked really good, and delivered a lot of action until the fight ended. So I think the UFC is still behind him. I think his next fight will be a main event on a fight night, if not a high-profile fight on a pay-per-view. Against whoever, maybe Max Holloway, if not one of those other guys. And he's one win away from a title shot, at the very most, if he doesn't get one next, which he won't, because whatever. If he does, it's for the interim title. Anyway, Calvin Kattar, really rough spot for him. He's had hot and cold results, I should say. They've all been great performances, but against really good competition, all main events in his last 5 or so fights. And now in his mid-30s with an injury like this, I just hope it's not a really big setback. I feel like it could be, obviously, but I want to be optimistic because Kattar's one of my favorite fighters, and he is one of the toughest guys in MMA. Next up, Max Griffin takes out Tim Means. This was a very good fight. One of those deceptively close fights, even though it wasn't split decision close. I thought that was a bad scorecard. But still, Max Griffin stole round 2 with a knockdown. He won round 1 with a knockdown. I don't think it was much of a steal. But round 2, I thought Tim Means was winning, and Max Griffin stole with a knockdown, which, in my opinion, sealed the round for him because it's not like Tim Means was dominating him there. But in that sense, this was a very close fight. I thought Max won every round, but still, it was a close fight throughout the whole way. Tim Means, I speculated coming into the fight that I didn't trust his chin so much because he'd been dropped a lot lately, in addition to suffering his one legitimate loss due to strikes against Nico Price somewhat recently. And for a guy approaching 40, this really didn't inspire a lot of confidence in that regard. I don't have much more faith in his chin. I guess, I have faith in his recoverability. He's, been knocked down however many times in his last few fights and gotten up all but once. So, there's that. But, again, I'll always go back to Nogueira getting knocked down by Josh Barnett, Heath Herring, and fucking Tim Sylvia. And then finally, when he fought Frank Mir, he didn't get up. So Tim Means, even though his chin's already failed him against Nico Price, but for a guy approaching 40, getting knocked down in 4 out of 5 fights or whatever, it's not a good look. Max Griffin, a lot of hustle. I mean, his power was there for him, getting those knockdowns. But aside from that, I thought he was really hustling against Tim Means, which is about how I expected the fight to look. Griffin's, shorter, got a little more work to do to find Tim Means, but he is more athletic, and he spent a lot of time moving around and was really effective. I thought he was effective, especially early on in round 1. Then Tim Means started to take over. I actually thought it was going to be one of those typical Tim Means fights where he wins 2 and 3, but then he got dropped, and then he was taken down and stuffed against the cage for a majority of 3 or whatever. Forgot exactly how the fight played out. But, it was a bad decision, a bad scorecard to give Tim Means the fight there. And even Tim Means acknowledged it. He was shaking his head. That's what makes Tim Means awesome. But good battle between 2 UFC veterans. And Max Griffin, I don't want to say either guy really needed this, but Max Griffin, even though, again, he's approaching 42, he's got more of the future out of these 2 guys, I'd say. So Griffin's still looking up, and it's good that he got the victory. I wanted Tim Means to win, but wasn't meant to be. Anyway, third fight. Waldo Cortez Acosta takes out Jared Vanderaa. This was a pretty close fight. It really was. It became, I thought Costa was going to kick his ass, and it certainly looked that way early on to me, but then it just became a battle of kicks versus punches. And although I thought Costa won, or Waldo, I should just start calling him, it's because I bet on Waldo, and I was looking for him to win. But Jared Vanderaa really impressed me, just, finding a way into this fight with calf kicks. He looked really good there. But still, overall, as a striker, he just wasn't able to, he was overwhelmed by the hands, I thought, throughout the whole fight, really. And Waldo outpointed him. Really close fight, though. Not the best debut on paper, especially if Jared Vanderaa is kicked out of the UFC. Then he kind of becomes like the heavyweight Kalen Curran, where it's not the best victory there. But close fight. A fight that did come down to the 3rd round, I want to say, and it was... Waldo was hurt. I thought he was compromised at the end of round 1 with those calf kicks. Like the first 3 kicks had him changing stances, doing that little hop. He was compromised early, but he fought through it, showed a lot of toughness. And I was happy for Jared Vanderaa. I was kind of hoping he got the decision, to be honest. I mean, I bet on Waldo, so that's a lie. But I always root for those guys with their backs against the wall, just like Chase Sherman when he fought Jared in his last fight. And here Vanderaa was scratching and clawing, and he had, a close fight. One of his better performances, I suppose, especially when you consider, his last few fights. And he fought very well. He did. For a guy that I thought was overmatched on the feet, he wasn't overmatched. Not completely, anyway. So the hands beat the feet, but it was a pretty close battle. Very tactical, on Vanderaa's end especially. And good enough debut for Waldo. I don't think his ceiling is championship or anything. And as a striker, he's got some work to do, let alone grappling. But again, another performance where he showed up in round 3. So, yeah, there's something to be said for that. Good debut. Next up, Josh Fremd versus Tresean Gore. Got this one wrong. I mean, Tresean Gore, like I said in the pre-fight, he does have a high ceiling athletically and, even professionally, MMA-wise. His record was 3-2, but it was really 5-2, and his 2 biggest victories came on The Ultimate Fighter. They aren't on his record. So he's a deceptively good fighter, I want to say. He doesn't look like a good fighter on paper, but there's something there, and he showed it last night. I mean, he choked Josh Fremd dead. Choked him dead in round 2, which, I know he's getting into MMA and learning everything all at once, but I had it in my head, Tresean Gore will find the knockout, or, he'll be a decision fighter. But for him to choke out Josh Fremd dead like that was just awesome. And there was a lot of strength and whatever still, but, definitely takes some submission chops, some grappling chops to choke out someone like that. So, Josh Fremd is no tomato can. So, really good victory for Tresean Gore. His best victory, especially his first victory in the UFC. But A great redemptive performance, if that's a word, redemptive, because now he's a UFC fighter. I do think if he lost that fight, he was probably going to get canned. I don't know if, what their threshold is and whatever, but for when it's a guy who's got, under 10 fights and he loses 3 in a row, they'll probably get rid of him sooner than later. So I really expected him to be cut with a loss there, and instead gets a win, a finish, by the way, got a finish bonus, and a beautiful submission, a highlight for his highlight reel. So really cool win for Tresean Gore. Tough loss for Josh Fremd. No one wants to lose like that, and his head did smack against the canvas. I don't know. I mean, I'll never understand the refs when the refs are like, all right, let him go, and then they're like surprised when his head snaps back. It's like, put your fucking palm there. I don't know. Either way, awesome win for Tresean Gore, and I'm glad he keeps his UFC career going. Next up, Khalil Roundtree takes out Dustin Jacoby. This one hurt me. I did have a good chunk of money on Dustin Jacoby here. For me, a good chunk of money is like $45. But I thought he won, too. I thought he won. I can't throw out the word robbery, because I did before the decision was announced. I said, all right, it's like 5-1 Jacoby, I'd say. But that's not 100-0. And Khalil Roundtree won. I did think it was a bad decision, but I also benefited from O'Malley beating Petr Yan the week beforehand, so I can't really complain. Either way, really close fight. Very cool fight. Roundtree clearly had the bigger moments with his power, as I speculated on, but Jacoby was winning the small moments. And Jacoby's chin, while it was enough to keep him in the fight and not go down and succumb, give in to Roundtree's power, it was still there. Roundtree's power, as I always say, power wins decisions too. It's not always the volume, and this was a case of that, even though I thought the volume got the better of the power in this one. That's what happened. He was outstruck, Roundtree. I think even almost doubled up in one round or another, but he always would land more powerful strikes. Even at the end of round 1, I think it was, I was sure Jacoby won, and then he ate a big left hand with like 20 seconds left. It didn't put him down or anything. I don't think he even winced, but I said, oh shit, that didn't look good, because they're visibly powerful strikes. And Khalil Roundtree, man, look, from here, he's got 3 wins now over kickboxers. Superior kickboxers. Gokhan Saki, which is as good as it gets, Dustin Jacoby, and Carl Roberson, who was a kickboxer, apparently, for like a few fights. But Khalil Roundtree is definitely, in terms of striking, maybe he's one of the best in the division. I don't trust his chin entirely, again, after that Johnny Walker loss, but, on the feet at range, I think he's probably as good as it gets. He's a problem for anybody in the division. So he moves forward from here, regardless of what you have to say about the division. And Jacoby's not going anywhere. Now he's 6-1-1 in 8 fights since returning to the UFC. And of course, you have to make the case for every fighter when you're promoting them. He could easily be 7-0-1, like I think he should be. Here's where you tell me, go rewatch that Maxim Grisham fight and tell me he shouldn't have lost. It was close. So was this one. This one wasn't that close in my opinion, but still, whatever. Decisions are decisions. All right. Roman Dolidze takes out Phil Hawes. Hawes is a guy I really want to do well. I want him to be as good as his potential is. I want him to be as good as others hope he is. But, I just don't think he's going to be. His chin, I don't trust. His cardio, which, I can't say that played a role here, even though he was knocked out towards the end of round 1, just like with Chris Curtis. But I did expect him, when he loses, I expected it to be his chin failing him. And that's what happened here. I just fucking wheeze. But Dolidze, look, you want to know how much I know about MMA. I said in the pre-fight, I said, I don't like Roman Dolidze going for those leg locks, that heel hook. He's too quick to lace up a leg. He leaves himself open. And yada, yada, yada. It's what won him the fight, pretty much. He torqued Philip Hawes' leg. Was it a heel hook or more like a knee bar? I don't know. I only watched the fight once. I forget what happened. But I remember Phil Hawes stood up and he was immediately, visibly compromised. And that was the beginning of the end. There were no leg kicks or anything. Dolidze just went full fucking knockout, and he got the knockout. Really good performance. Wasn't anything like Calvin Kattar's injury. This was, a deliberate injury from Roman Dolidze. We watched it happen in front of our eyes, and it secured him the knockout victory. I played Roman Dolidze via knockout round 1 small, but I played rounds 2 and 3 big. So overall, that was a disappointment for me prop-wise, but still, Dolidze as a bet really prevailed. He's a good fighter. He's a good grinder, and he can be the berserker too. I prefer the berserker. And Philip Paulus from here, look, I don't know. He's got to really, he's got to change things up. I don't know, go down a weight class or whatever, but he's going to be losing via knockout a lot, I'd say, at the UFC level. Andrei Arlovsky versus Marcos Rogerio de Lima. I don't know. Andrei Arlovsky, that's his third submission loss. And all 3 submission losses kind of look similar. I know he was tapped by Barnett in the 4th round of a war. And that was like a little different short choke or whatever. But they all look similar, his losses. They're all quick taps. Tom Aspinall, Marcos Rogerio de Lima, and Barnett. They're all very quick taps. I think he's a guy who those are the fights in which he's checked out. When he's knocked out, he's knocked out. But his submission losses, it seems like he's checked out a little bit. And not that I expect him to get up with Barnett on top of him deep into round 4 or whatever. But still, Andrei Arlovsky, I think the 3 submission losses, they all look very similar. I just see, a hand goes around neck and he's tapping immediately. And that was the case here. It looked like he knew he lost. Marcos Rogerio de Lima is a big, strong guy. Again, coming up in weight from years ago. But he's turned into a solid, natural-looking heavyweight. And he's big and strong. And he's a finisher. He's a bona fide finisher. He's dangerous, which Arlovsky felt early on the feet. And his ground and pound is only more vicious. And it didn't get there. Arlovsky was tying him up, trying to slow the fight down. And he just slowly but surely gave up position. Marcos climbed on top of him. Arlovsky never had the best jiu-jitsu, but it didn't look good at all here. And it was one and done, over in 1 round. So, really shitty loss for Arlovsky. Overall, one of the shittiest losses in his career. And I know he was knocked out in seconds by Brett Rogers and whatever, but this wasn't a good look. And Marcos Rogerio de Lima, now he's got some momentum, definitely. Big win over Arlovsky, big win over Rothwell, and a very close fight over Blagoy Ivanov. Very close. So, I like him as a heavyweight right now. He's he's made it. I don't think he's going to win the world title or anything, but it's cool seeing that guy that I dismissed as a garbage light heavyweight flourishing as a heavyweight. So, good win for the violent Brazilian. Next up, Junyoung Park submits Joseph Holmes. I did not see that coming. I really didn't. I saw Junyoung Park winning a typical Junyoung Park fight, which it looked like he was going to, but I didn't see him getting the rear naked choke. Joseph Holmes was too accepting of bad positions, letting Junyoung Park take his back, which I thought he could have resisted a lot more, and instead Junyoung Park got the submission. I don't think Holmes expected him to be able to get the submission. That's why I think he was too accepting of that position. And Junyoung Park, he's a problem. He really is. He's got heavy hands. He's good at brawling, as we've seen, and he's won a lot of his fights inside the octagon, if not all of them, with takedowns and top control. And here he gets the finish via rear naked choke, which was a pleasant surprise. Really was. He didn't get that finish over John Phillips, but here, he schools the newcomer. Not that Holmes is a total newcomer. This was his 3rd fight in the UFC. But Junyoung Park separated himself from guys like Holmes and put a stamp on it with a submission. So, really cool win for the favorite. Tough loss for Holmes, especially to lose via submission, which is his bread and butter. But, whatever. We'll see. Maybe he'll stick around and find some success. Junyoung Park from here, again, he's got some losses. That win over Eric Anders, but the loss to Gregory Rodriguez. He's middle of the pack for the UFC, but he's a damn good fighter, no doubt about it, and he's going to be around for some time. He already has. And then Chase Hooper versus Steve Garcia. All right, man strength. That's what I said. There was little boy strength. I got that totally wrong. I thought he looked really good against Kalarish, and he did. But Steve Garcia just overwhelmed him, which I did speculate that could happen. I said I think Chase is still susceptible to being tossed around. You know, the man strength isn't there, and in fact, he's a weak little boy, and that's what it looked like here. Steve Garcia was just, he was much better on his feet, much stronger, and he was landing everything. It looked like Chase just didn't belong in there. Chase had no answer. He didn't have the strength really to change the fight. Whereas, a guy like Roman Dolidze can get hit and shoot in on a leg, even not having a good takedown or whatever, but it's an option for him, and he's got some strength to, just force you to use your muscles defensively or whatever. And instead, you got Steve Garcia just breaking, getting him up, punching him in the face a few times, shucking him off, get up, punch him in the face a few times, and within 2 minutes, that was it. There was like 4 knockdowns. So this was an eye-opening loss for me, for Chase Hooper, I should say. He really, needs to change things. He needs to give himself options, because I do think he's going to run into a big problem on the feet with a lot of fighters, and he's not going to have the wrestling. He's not going to have the wrestling as an answer. I don't know. I know he's a guy that can pull guard and whatever, but that's not something you always want to do. He's got to change things up, because he looked like a fish out of water here, and that's against a very lower-end UFC fighter. Again, Steve Garcia's looked good, but against lower competition. He's looked bad against, the better competition, which is still low-end UFC. So, eye-opening loss for Chase Hooper. He came in as a big favorite, and he leaves. He's going to be probably an underdog in his next one, regardless of who he's fighting. And Steve Garcia fighting for everything, and he makes it. Gets a first-round knockout. I believe he got a bonus, cashed in as a favorite, and won my respect, which is what I know he was fighting for. All right. Cody Durden takes out Carlos Mota. This was a good performance from Cody Durden. I don't know exactly when these guys took their fights. They each had different... Well, Mota only stepped up to fight Durden, but Durden was going to fight Clayton Rodriguez. Either way, they both took it on relatively short notice, but Mota took it on very short notice. And Durden looked like he looked like the fresher fighter, but also the better fighter. I thought Mota didn't really have much at all for Durden here. Durden, if he wasn't going to be out on his feet, knocked out, he was just one takedown attempt from having the fight on the ground. Anytime he wanted it there, he put it there, and that was the story of the fight. Really good win for Cody Durden. I did bet on him to win via third-round submission at incredibly long odds, and I thought he was going to get it, especially with, even though Mota's a jiu-jitsu black belt, his finishes come via strikes. I thought he could have been some overrated black belt, but Mota's jiu-jitsu held up. And look, it held up offensively as well, from his back, from the guard, but it just wasn't enough, and, he never really threatened Durden with anything too crazy, a few tight arm bars, but Durden, I thought, comfortably won every round. So, good win for Durden, tough debut for Mota. And then Christian Rodriguez takes out, the fuck was his name? Joshua Weems. I did expect him to get knocked out. I don't trust his chin. Again, being knocked out by Fernie Garcia, his only finish via strikes. And Joshua Weems, he didn't look bad on the feet, but man, he was tapped out with an arm triangle. What exactly happened there? Oh yeah, Weems got Christian Rodriguez down. He got Christian Rodriguez down a few times, opening himself up with strikes, and then getting in on the hips, got the takedowns, and he was doing some good work. And Christian Rodriguez just seemed so patient and calm throughout the whole thing. It was like he knew better, and he did know better. And then at the end, I think it was round 1, maybe it was early round 2. I forget. I got to watch these fights again. But he went for a spinning elbow, which I thought was a stupid move, and I wrote it down like, got to write that down. That's a bad move, because it allowed him to be taken down. And then maybe 10 seconds later, he reversed it, hit a submission, and Joshua Weems was tapping. So really cool victory for Christian Rodriguez. Again, he looked like the guy that knew better and was just waiting for his opportunity. And Weems did have a lot of nervous energy. Again, much like Carlos Mota, he accepted the fight last week. Or maybe it's still this week, I think. And that's a rough debut. But he came, fought hard, and I think he took his first submission loss here. So for a guy with all the submissions, that's a rough one. Maybe he was tapped once more. I don't know. I forgot his record. But anyway, good win for Christian Rodriguez, C-Rod, as they call him. And a good way to start off the night. He also got a bonus as well, I believe. All right, so that's the recap. Hope you guys enjoyed this shit. Like, share, subscribe, all that wonderful horse shit. And remember, Chase Hooper has man strength.